This episode of the Flush Podcast is brought to you by North Dakota Tourism. Start planning your fall hunt in North Dakota at legendarynd.com. My guest today is a listener of this show. He reached out to me a few days ago to share his hunting story. Millions of Americans can relate to his journey, which is why I'm looking forward to talking with Scott Kinnane today. He became a hunter despite not having the one person most of us would expect to be his mentor. His father. Welcome to another episode of the Flush Podcast. I'm Travis Frank. I'm your host. Brandon Morton is our producer. We've been producing the Flush Podcast now since the beginning of this year. Over the last several months, I've heard from many of our listeners. I've read dozens of stories and inspiring messages, and I want you all to know that I appreciate every single one of them. It really means a lot to know how you feel about the topics that we discuss and what we can do to make these episodes even more enjoyable for all of you. So please keep the messages and the comments coming. And the reason that I bring this up today is because it leads me to our guest today. It happens to be one of our listeners that took the time to send me a message. Scott Kinnane is his name. Scott, welcome to the podcast. Have you ever done anything like this before?
I haven't, and I got to say, I'm kind of nervous, Travis.
Well, don't be nervous. I appreciate you taking the time to just reach out and share your story. But before we get into it, I'm just curious, why do you listen to this podcast?
You know, it's not just informative. I love the way you and your guests just seem so down home, right? I remember listening to the radio. You'll probably get into my birthday here later on, but I grew up listening to the radio, and it always seemed like they were just right there. They were part of your family. You were sitting across the table listening to the conversations of the adults going on, and that's what I really enjoy about your podcast. It's informative, I feel like I'm just right there. So, big kudos to you and your team. Thank you.
Appreciate hearing that. Thank you. It's always our goal to really just kind of let others share their stories. I learn a lot as well. And I do always want to know what people want to hear about. So, I think our goal is to inform, educate, inspire, and entertain people about something that we all love, which is to hunt. So, Scott, you sent me a message and I responded right away. I pretty much try to do that every time I get one. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get back to them. But are you okay if I read it right now?
Oh, go ahead. That would be wonderful.
All right, because it's really going to set up our conversation today. Here it goes. Mr. Frank, I listen to your podcast on a regular basis. We have even met at last year's Pheasant Fest before the shutdowns. The reason for my reaching out is simple. I have a thought regarding a subject for an upcoming podcast that I think would be beneficial for this upcoming season. I was raised in a single-parent home in the 60s and 70s, with no father around to teach me the finer points of boyhood and journey to manhood. I was lost. I spent vast amounts of time in the outdoors as an escape. You see, being a boy with no father was not a common thing back then, and there were certain stigmas associated. Therefore, hanging out in nature was the place to be. The trees and the animals didn't care. My story took a turn when a neighbor asked my mother if I'd like to go to the range and shoot some clays. I did, and I was hooked. But here's the hitch. Where do I go from here, and how do I get there? The bottom line of my rant is that I know there are many more young men like myself. 2019 statistics state that 10.5 million single-parent families exist in America. I think we talk lots about taking someone hunting, and I hear much about introducing women to the pleasures of the outdoors. But what about all the lost boys who have a burning in their soul and do not know what it is? How can we get our men and women of the outdoors to recognize there is a quiet part or this quiet part of our population could use a shoulder. I made it into the outdoors, and I owe much of it to a hot summer August day in 1972. Tough journey and many hunts alone, but the passion is still there. With your help, I think we could bring a specific message to your audience on who we can reach out to and take to the woods, fields, and swamps. I hope you read this and give it some heartfelt thought. Well, I've read it, and my thought right away was I'd love to learn more about your story, specifically how how it may relate to so many of our listeners out there. Scott, you say you grew up in a family without a father. How did that happen?
Well, to be honest, I never really had that conversation with anyone in my family. I do know that my father is still alive. I know where he lives. He's never reached out. I've had my kids ask if I would reach out to him. They want to know more about, where Dad came from. How did he get here? What happened? My mom got sick really early in life too, which was a really difficult journey. She passed away when she was 58, so that would have been 38 when I was how old I was. She was sick for a super long time, 18 years before that. I was 3. My sister was just born, and from what I understand is he packed up and left one day. I got to be honest, I'm just going to take a step back. That was really weird to hear you read that. It choked me up. It's so strong. And I know there's so many kids. I know I made it sound like a man journey, but it is important. I have 2 sons of my own. I have a daughter. I know how important it is to have that male figure, right? We see things different, we talk different, we act different, and that's nothing against, the women that were in my life at all. They were super important as well, but it was just, you just missed it. You saw that interaction with all the other boys and their dads, boys and their uncles and their brothers, and the wrestling and the camaraderie, and then the stories at school, and you just weren't a part of it. So I know there's a group. I mean, I've reached out to them, I've talked to them, I've tried to help them. I know they're out there. And that's why I wrote to you. I'm like, you touch so many people and you do it with such honesty, right? And I'm like, I hope, I hope he reads this. I didn't expect you to reach out to me and ask me to be a part of this. I thought for sure that you were going to, pull in somebody that was super, super smart and has done a bunch of podcasts and knew how to talk and stuff like that. But man, I sure appreciate it. I'm
still learning what I'm doing here too. So we just have conversations, right? I can say that in a lot of ways, your story relates to my story because my parents got divorced when I was, I want to say I was probably 10 years old, and I consistently found myself going out into the woods. We had a woods and fields behind our place, and I spent a lot of time there because I felt so different than other people that I knew, other kids in school. My parents were divorced, and I hid that fact when I was so ashamed. I felt so embarrassed by it because that's not how it's supposed to be, right? I
right.
didn't know different. I didn't know any different. I'm just a kid. I'm still learning about this world too. So, you said that you retreated into the outdoors. Where did you grow up?
Well, I'm originally, I was born in Washington, D.C., which was really weird. But then, the things happened. And then we moved back to Iowa. My mom's family is from Iowa. Vinton, Iowa. So it's a county seat, so we're really proud of that, by the way. But
fantastic.
I know, you got to throw in those bragging, right? But and then we
Right,
moved.
right, absolutely.
It's so important, when you get the county seat
It
label
is.
put on you,
Hey,
you're like,
those are facts. Yep.
and we
So what
and
did
we
you have for an outdoor escape then?
well, so we lived in Iowa for a little bit, but here's the hard thing, right? Is it's the '60s. And being a single parent in a small town in the '60s, when your parents are very well known in the community, right? And grandpa was very well known, grandma was very involved in the church, and yeah, there must be something wrong, with mom if if her husband left her, right? And for many years, my grandmother wouldn't even admit it. We would get dropped off at Grandma and Grandpa's, and Grandma would just tell people that Mom went back, Mary went back to, just to have some time away and with the husband and stuff like that. So you had that whole thing going on that it was like, well, what are we doing here? Mom couldn't handle being talked about behind her back. She thought it was hurting her mom and dad. All right. So she said, we're moving. And so we moved up to Minnesota. I have no idea why. And I've never asked why she decided on Minnesota, but we stayed a little bit in St. Louis Park. And then she got a house in Minnetonka, right by Hopkins High. It was Lindbergh back then, but Hopkins High, which was a huge culture shock, from going from a small town to the big city.
Yeah.
And it's just as scary as it sounds when you make that move.
Right.
And then that's where we stayed and grew up. And we bought an old farmhouse, and I say we because it was mine, being the man of the house, so to speak. And you were told that all the time, right? You're the man of the house. You take care of things. It was great, though. It had a huge woods and a sand pit and an old barn and, tall grass, great trees. So, yeah, I could just go lose myself, and it was a savior. I honestly don't know what I would have done if I didn't have that to tromps around in for hours and hours, and knew that I had to be home at dark, and that was pretty much all the rules you had. So,
Wow. Does that land still exist today, or has it been built into a development?
yeah, it got built up, which is too bad because for a lot of years there, I mean, it lasted a long time. It really did. I'm gonna probably go 20 years ago, is when it just completely got taken over. But 20 years in my lifespan is nothing now. And, so you were able to go back and walk in the woods and yeah, so it was really cool to go back and look and get those memories coming over you, walk to the exact tree that you built your fort in, and where you used to set your traps and, for the squirrels and bunnies, and where you get your acorns for your slingshot. And yeah.
Right. I if you're bringing back all kinds of memories for me, I'm starting to get teary eyed here because I had my dad still lives in the same neighborhood, but the land that was wild and free, and we had animals in the backyard, and I would disappear back there every day. I was just obsessed with it, and I remember whenever things would get, things at home weren't going well, I would always that would be my escape, and I remember watching the deer and watching all the animals out there and just observing and learning from them and all the time I spent there. And just a couple days ago, I went back to watch my nephew, who was performing a play in a house in the neighborhood that was very close to. So basically, the land that I had access to, my escape growing up, was turned into about 1,500 houses several years ago, like 20 years ago. But I remembered when I was sitting in this person's lawn watching my nephew and niece perform a play outside. I looked around and I thought, oh my goodness, I shot my first deer probably 100 yards from this house. And if I drive through the neighborhood, there was at one point still a couple of my old deer stands in the cracks of a tree. There would just be a board there. But I spent some time out there. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to take away from your story, but you're bringing a lot of memories for me back. And it seems so similar to what I had. Although my dad was a part of my life. We stayed there living at my dad's house as a kid. And so I had a father that was there. You didn't have a father. At what point did you, as a child, realize that you might want to hunt, or that you wanted to do some of these things in life that you would have thought your dad would have been there to teach you about?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and I'm going to answer it in a second. But thank you
Yeah.
so much for relating to my story. I mean, I'm sitting here shaking, and I'm not a young man, but it's just the emotions when you talk about this stuff. I mean, you tell your kids some of that stuff, right? But they weren't there. They didn't live it. They've got a dad who loves them dearly. I've got grandkids, love them dearly. So when I talk to you, right, and you're going, oh, I know how you feel. I've been there. I appreciate that. It's making my ability to try to articulate what the message I'm trying to get across easier. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a
When
lot of
did
others listening right now that'll relate as well. So just know that, and just be comfortable.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I think, and that's why I wanted to do this. I think there are a lot of us that this has happened to or is happening to. I'm hoping there's a bunch of young boys and girls that have this passion that just don't know what to do with it. Will reach out, and I know you and I will talk about this in a bit. About where can you turn and who can help you. So, but. Yeah, to get back to your original question about, when did I realize it? Man, I don't think I've ever not had that feeling. Not about hunting, but just wanting. I'd hear a bird, and I go, "What kind of bird is that?" And I would try to chase it through the woods, and then look at it, find it finally. There's the song, and then I only had a set of encyclopedias, so I'd have to go back and flip through the pages, and try to find that bird, or the squirrels look different, right? When you're young, you're like, oh, well, a squirrel's a squirrel, and it's like, oh, whoa, all of a sudden there's this big, huge one. Well, what kind of squirrel is that? That's not like the little red one that's running around.
Right. He's got an orange belly. That's a big old fox squirrel right there.
Right. You got it. But when you don't have pops to come home to and go, hey, I saw this big gray squirrel in the woods. What is that? What kind is that? I saw a bird that was blue and white, and screamed at the top of its lungs. What kind of bird is that? And that's what's hard, right? And while Mom loved animals, and I won't get into that because I can hear my sister laughing right now about all the animals that she had in around the house. But yeah, it was how do I learn this stuff? I don't have that person to just go home to and go, hey, what is this? So I think to answer your question, that passion has always been there. And then hunting was going and getting my hair cut and picking up an Outdoor Life magazine and going, what is this? look at this stuff, So then it was, what do you want for your birthday? Well, I want hunting and fishing magazines and books and things like that, and before you know it, I'm getting those as presents, instead of other things. I guess boys get like basketballs and whatnot, and Grandpa bought me my first Woolrich shirt. I still remember today, bright red. The old Woolrich shirt. Man, I wore that thing till there was just a thread. I wish I would have just saved it and.
Right.
But
Well, did you see anybody? So you had wildlife around your farm, it sounds like. Did you see anybody try to hunt them?
I didn't. Remember, this is in Iowa where we were, right? When we go back there weren't really any hunters. They were farmers, right? And I never heard anybody talking about hunting. We had the Cedar River that ran through town. So you'd hear about people going down and going fishing, right? And bullhead fishing and catfish fishing. But I never got that opportunity, right? It wasn't until I moved up here, and I don't remember exactly what age I was, but I had a friend in school that was going on about how he and his dad were headed to Devil's Lake, North Dakota to go goose hunting. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yep, my dad's brother, and he went on, and then he'd come back and he'd talk about nothing but, and that turned out to be my best friend ever, Eric, Crazy.
Did he ever invite you then?
He did. I never went to Devil's Lake, but they had, his dad is the one that I wrote to you about on that hot August day that called my mom. And so, I'll probably get pretty choked up here in a little bit, but yeah, I can remember that like yesterday, laying on the floor in the house, and the phone rings, and it's that stupid green phone with a 40-foot cord, and mom picking it up and cooking dinner, and she's just like, yeah. And I thought, uh-oh, I'm in trouble, because anytime you hear mom go, yeah, he's right here, right? You don't talk on the phone at that age to anybody. I'm like, oh man, did I get caught?
How old you were?
I was 12.
Okay.
I was 12 at that point. So, yeah.
So it says in your note that you got to go shoot clay targets.
I did.
That was with your best friend Eric and his dad. Then where did you go from there?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk about the clay shooting experience, because that was the first time I never went through firearm safety, anything like that. I'd never held a gun, and here's this guy. He's just like, yeah, I'll take him. I want to take him. I'm like, no way. Mom got off the phone and said, that was Mr. Anderson, and he wants to take you clay shooting. And I'm like, well, what the heck is that? And she's like, well, I have no idea, but it sounded fun. You get to go shoot a gun. And I'm like, whoo, really? And then immediately the hands start to sweat, and I'm scared and don't know what's going to happen. And man, he was so nice. He's the quietest guy you'd ever, he's that pure Scandinavian, doesn't have an emotion he wears on his sleeve. He's just quiet, hardworking. And he picked me up in his truck with Eric sitting there, and he said, we're going to go skeet shooting. And I'm like, well, I don't know what that is. Mom offered to pay for it, and he's like, nope, I've got it. We got to the range. He pulled out a beautiful matched pair of Remington, and this is what I learned later as I get older, Remington 870s matched pair with poly chokes. And I don't know if you know what a poly choke is.
Tell me more. Tell
So
me more.
he shot skeet in the Air Force,
Okay.
and so he had this pair made for him. And a poly choke is an adjustable choke that sits on the end of the barrel. So
Mm-hmm.
they were 24-inch barrels, and then when he would move out in the stations, he would just grab a hold of that adjustable choke and twist it and make the pattern tighter or more open. I was like, wow. But that day was amazing. That's all I'm going to say. It just was amazing. I was hooked.
It hooked you, right?
I
One shot
hooked.
is your memory is seems very vivid on this, which is really cool to hear. So obviously you were hooked, but you're left with what next, right?
Oh, and that was terrible. Yeah, I came home and I couldn't think about anything but, and it didn't end with, yeah, we'll have to do this more. I had a great time. It didn't end with any of that. It was dropped me off, and I went in the house, and I'm like, now what? Now what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's the fire is stoked. You know, I want a gun. Oh, what kind of gun? I want one like that. Well, I don't even know what that is. Because he didn't explain what kind of gun it was. And yeah, and now the confusion comes in, and that's where it's when you get somebody hooked, right? Because I hear people say, take somebody hunting. But man, once you get them hunting and they're hooked, you can't unhook the hook and
Yep.
throw them back in the pond. Because that's what
Well,
happened to me. I was
yeah.
just well, we've got the internet now, so I suppose you could
Right.
figure it out.
Things have changed a little bit in our ability to access information. There's no doubt about that. They've changed a lot from us, from the 70s, obviously. But what Eric did in your life was he planted a seed, right? And that seed grew really, really fast because it sprouted very quickly. But he just gave you that opportunity, right? And so I think that if I'm understanding your mission today now and what you're doing is something that I think is extremely important for everybody that hunts and fishes to at least consider. And that's just being able to invest in another person to help them grow and to experience things and to teach them. Because we have a lot of, take a kid hunting day, take a kid fishing day, youth hunt for this, youth hunt for that. And it's great to give people that aren't that don't grow up with hunting or fishing, uh, fathers or mothers. It's great to give them to plant that seed. But I can tell you, Scott, just from talking with somebody that's been, started up his own mentorship to get more hunters in the field, and he says the biggest thing is he's realizing that he needs to take somebody out for a season. You can't take them out for a day to a shooting range, walk out, to a hunt club and let them flush some pen raised birds, and then say, "All right, good luck. You're going to be a hunter now." He says it's a commitment to saying, "All right, I can't mentor a whole group of you successfully. I'm finding that I need to mentor one or two people for a season because there's so much to learn," right? You experience this. You're wondering, what do I do now? And even though we have all this technology and this information, you need somebody to, in a lot of ways, we need somebody to hold our hand through it. Is that kind of how you're feeling about this topic too?
Oh, very well said. Way to
Okay.
go, Travis. That was perfect. Because
Well, I think that's, we talk about this a lot on this show and others, and just really taking somebody new fishing or taking somebody new hunting or taking somebody new in the outdoors, whatever it is that you do, it's just providing that opportunity. But it really goes in depth in this sport, in this hobby, in this passion of ours. How do you envision that if you hope to inspire others? What does that look like for you?
I'm So I am going to 100% agree with, and I don't know who you were talking about. I feel the exact same way, and I have to agree when I mentor someone or I pull them under my wing. I don't even call it mentoring. I latch on to them, and if they let me
Yeah.
latch on, I reach out, I grab their hand, and if they grab it back, we're gone, right? I
Hmm.
figure they'll pay it forward, and instead of me trying to do 5, 6, 7 one-time hunts or fly fishing trips. My wife loves to fly fish. She's a great mentor as well. Um, it's let's just, I'm going to grab your hand, you grab it back, and we're going to go. We're going to learn how to read maps. We're going to walk up to a farmer, right? And we're going to ask for permission. And what does that sound like? And what does it look like? And what's it feel like to have them tell you no versus they say you're sure. And you harvest a bird or two, right?
Uh-huh.
You take those back and you show them and you ask them if they want one of them. How do I talk to people? How do I read a map? How do I read a compass in the grouse woods? How do I make sure I don't get lost and I can find my way back to the truck? How do I make reservations at a hotel that takes dogs? How do I feed the dogs? What do you feed the dogs? It's
Right.
right. I mean, it just goes
There's so much
on.
that, yeah, there's so much that we learn from experience, right? And in some ways you'll get to a point with somebody where you say, all right, I'm gonna let go and you're gonna be on your own and you're gonna fail. And that's okay to fail. That's 100% okay to fail. I can give you a very specific example. This is this spring. My neighbor, his son, who's now 16 years old, right? He's been hunting on some really great property. His grandpa took him hunting when he was a kid, and this is for turkeys, right? So he's been successful almost every single time on opening day because he's got a great property. Well, his grandpa passed away a couple years ago from cancer, and so his dad and I have been hunting with him and continuing to teach him, and he's been learning along the way. And this year, it was all right. You're on your own, and he didn't get one the first day, which was something new. He didn't get one the second day, and so he said, "Hey, will you come out hunting with me today or tomorrow?" And so I said, "Sure, we'll go out there." And he's he's always sat outside of where these turkeys roost. He doesn't go in the woods because his other, his grandpa and his grandpa's friend always said, "Don't go in there, you're gonna mess it up." But there was something burning inside of him this year, and he said, "I want to go in there and see if I can't get closer." And I looked at him and I said, "Yes, you can do that. You will learn a lot when you do that." And I only said to do that because if he doesn't fail, then he's not going to learn, right?
Right.
He's got to have that opportunity to fail. So it doesn't matter if I'm going out pheasant hunting or if I'm going out quail hunting or if I'm going out turkey hunting with somebody and all they experience is the success, then that's not realistic. That is not the reality. We all need to have the opportunity to fail because when we fail, we learn, right? So I'm now ranting and I apologize for that, but I love the opportunity for us to let's be real with people and say we need to do more than just go out and we got 25 kids walking across a field and we're gonna shoot clay pigeons and then we're gonna go walk, and it's got to be more. There's so much depth to learning all about hunting and fishing, and we get to plant seeds. But you're talking, Scott, taking this into the real depths of holding somebody's hand through an entire season, or how long do you think you really need to invest with somebody?
I do believe it's a season, and I believe some of them are even more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, you can tell when somebody's ready to fail, right? And you've got boys,
Uh-huh.
right?
Right.
I can throw the pitch a little harder. They're ready to swing and miss. They're ready to get
Yeah.
hit. You can tell. So I think that's when I feel comfortable cutting them loose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some have caught on immediately, you know. Um, yeah, you can just feel it, but you are absolutely correct in that you gotta let them get out there, and that's what ended up with me, right? I was taken a couple of times quite further down the road by Mr. Anderson and his son Eric, but for 4 years it was how do I do this, and get dropped off and walk and the farmer would stop and go, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm looking for pheasants. And he's like, well, there ain't no damn pheasants where you're looking, and it's kind of like, well, can you help me? And then they'd send me down the road a little bit, and might get lucky, or getting my license was phenomenal, right? Then it was throwing the gun that I had finally bought and that freedom that came with that, so people are going to take that different step, but just to prepare them better for taking that step, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is what I'm not looking to make people successful. I threw that little bit of kindling on the fire and then a couple of bigger logs, and now you're ready. You know how to build the fire, you know how to keep it going, you know how to build it. And I'm always here, right? Pick
Yeah.
up the phone, give me a call. I'm always here if you have a new question, right?
Right.
I have people call me that I've talked to and tried to help, and they'll go, "Hey, I'm thinking about going to Montana. Have you ever been there?" And it's kind of like, "Yep, I have." Did you like it? And that opens up that whole other conversation of,
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking a bigger step. You don't tell them where to find the birds, but just like you do on your show. I listened to your show. You didn't tell me exactly where to go in Wyoming when you and George went there. You just told me it was awesome, and you got
And
to
it
do it.
exists and it's out there.
You
Oh man,
lit
Scott,
that
we've had
fire. You threw a
dozens and
couple of
dozens.
you threw kindling on the fire. I'm like, oh, I got to go to Wyoming.
Yeah,
So that's what
good.
we do. I think as mentors, as teachers, as people who care, that's what we do. We don't just take them on a hunt and then, wasn't that fun? And they go, yeah,
Yeah.
that was great. Well,
So, Scott, it sounds to me like your mission right now is to say, Scott, myself personally, I'm taking it as a personal responsibility to make a difference in another person's life, a young kid, because I grew up and I experienced what it was like to not have those opportunities. So you're not basing this on an organization. You're not saying, this is a Pheasants Forever youth hunting group or this is my own charity or anything like that. You're just saying, hey, hunters, let's be aware, right? When we show up to a public uh, property and there's somebody that may need some help, give them the help, right? Step up. Is that am I reading this right?
you are, and it's recognizing. I guess it's being Mr. Anderson, recognizing it and going, "Yep, I see that fire." Right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be you could run into, but yeah, that's my personal mission. I'm not. There are great organizations out there that are doing wonderful things, becoming an outdoors woman, right?
Yep.
Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Pheasants Forever, Rough Grouse Society. I mean, the list goes on, but it's really us as individuals to recognize the Scotts and the Travises of the world and reach out and grab their hand, and if they grab it back, don't let it go. Not for a while. Just hang on and take them on a journey, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Where are some of the kids that you found to invest your time into? Where do you see them? I mean, are you looking constantly to say that kid's got something different? He stands out. I want to ask him questions about hunting, or how do you approach it?
Yeah, yeah. I tell you, it's run a really wide gamut. So it's been as much as grabbing one of my own kids' hands. I mean,
Mhm.
as much as we like to think our kids are going to follow in our footsteps and they're going to love everything that I love because I'm their dad. Well, no.
Yeah.
We like some of the same movies, things like that, but not every one of my children shares my passion for the outdoors and fishing and things like that. But I always grab their hand, right, and go, this is, and they can tell when you're passionate about something, right? I'm sure you're the same way. So it's been as close as one of my own children. I'm hoping my grandkids. I had my nephew last year. He had never shot a pheasant. He'd never shot a grouse. He'd never shot a woodcock. Year and a half ago, we started hanging out, right? And that's something we hadn't done. We'd always talked at family gatherings. I knew he liked to shoot. I knew he liked to hunt. His dad's a hunter. I had dogs, right? So yeah, I just said, you want to go out sometime? And he's like, yeah, I'd like to do that. So through that journey, right, I reached out, I grabbed his hand. I'm like, you want to hang out? And he grabbed it back. And it was like, oh, cool. Right.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's, nobody's going to have a problem with it. So let's just go. And we ended the last year. He had called me and early in the year before hunting season and said, my bucket list hunt is the UP of Michigan to go grouse hunting. I'm like, all right, let's plan it. I'm not planning it all by myself. So we went through grocery list. We scoured over maps. We put pins on Onyx. We called and made reservations and set the date and did all that and went for 7-8 days. I think we ended up the total hunt and had beautiful weather and experienced bear hunters running in the woods to, him opening up to somebody that was in camp. He's a pretty quiet young man, and going and hunting without me with this guy that was in camp who was super, super nice. He went hunting with him for a couple hours. And I mean, it's just, so it's that way. And then it's as much as I ran into a mom and her son walking in the Orvis store in St. Louis Park, and we were there to buy some stuff. And she walked in, and her son had a brand new spinning reel and a little plastic tackle box. And they looked lost, and everybody in the store was super busy helping people. And I said, they don't sell spinning rods here. This is a fly fishing company. And she said, oh, well, my son's headed off to Boy Scouts. They're going to do some fishing. So this is his first fishing pole, and his dad's not around, and I don't know what to do. I don't know how to, all that stuff. I'll make the story a little shorter. And I said, well, I can help you, right? And she's like, really? I'm like, absolutely. So we stood right there and strung his fishing pole up, and we opened his tackle box up and named each one of them and what you'd use them for, and we tied knots. And I said, here's the practice knot, and I'd clip it off and I'd make them tie it, and my wife, bless her heart, she's standing out in the parking lot by the truck going, really dude? And I'm like, yep, I got to do this, but it's that recognition. We all see it. We all know a Scott. We all know a Travis. Yeah. You don't have to look far.
Right. Absolutely. I want to ask you about some of the challenges that you've experienced and some of the tips that you might be able to give somebody. But first, I have a very positive message from our partners in North Dakota. They are telling us that the rooster pheasant or the ringneck pheasant crow count is up 15% this year in 2020, and with an estimated 4 million breeding ducks, up 18% this year in North Dakota. In the central region, it is prime habitat for hunting waterfowl and upland birds. Plus, North Dakota has more than 700,000 acres of private land open to public walk-in hunting. For the latest plots guide, visit the North Dakota Game and Fish Department or legendarynd.com. Scott, have you ever hunted up in North Dakota?
Absolutely.
Oh, isn't it a paradise up there? I love giving that read. I'm thankful that they allow us to produce this show. I mean, obviously people are aware that advertisements happen, and the beauty is like we get to just kind of, this is the message that they're telling us based off of the numbers. But I can tell you from my own personal experience, the first time I ever went on a hunting trip, it was to North Dakota, bird hunting trip, I should say. And oh gosh, just to see the birds and the open space and just the opportunities, I love that place up there. Do you have any favorite hunts that you've ever taken or anywhere at all?
Oh boy, man, I've got so many. How do you even pick them?
Wait a second. I forgot to announce this. Today's your birthday, isn't it?
Well, it was yesterday, but yeah, it's my birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Do you wanna share how many years young?
I am 60 years young.
Wow, what a milestone.
It is.
Any guess as to how many people you've hunted with in your life?
Oh, I guess. I would say over 500.
What?
Yep.
Holy cow, 500 people. That's a lot. I think most people would say between probably 15 and 50 would be probably a common amount, but wow, good for you.
Well,
what's your greatest if you had to relive one hunt again, where would it be and why?
It would be now this is where you're going to get, you had to do that, didn't you? You're just going to try and choke me up and get me going, make the old man start crying on the phone, but I'm okay with that. My man card's safe. So it would be Eric, my best friend, who has since passed away. Took me grouse hunting, my first grouse hunt. And you got to understand, my grouse gun was 870 Wingmaster 30-inch full choke. Mm-hmm. Not a grouse gun. Yeah. And he said, I'm gonna take you out behind Grandma and Grandpa's farm and up in Detroit Lakes, and I'm gonna take you grouse hunting. So I'm like, okay. And we were walking along, and he split up from me, and I got the little panic going because we're in the deep, deep, dark forest, and I'm yelling at him, "Don't go so far away," I wasn't ready to fail at that level.
Yeah,
as you said. And I was standing there, and I was looking for him, and I look up, and they're 15 feet in front of me are all these birds sitting in this little scrubby pine tree. And I'm like, what the heck are those? What are those? So I'm whistling, and he comes walking over, and I'm like, I've got my hand on my lips. I'm like, shh, shh. I go, what are those? Look at all of them. And he's like, oh, them are partridge. He goes, you got to shoot. So I lifted my gun. I was just going to swat it right out of the tree. I closed my eyes. I pulled the trigger, and they all flew away. And he was on the ground laughing. He goes, you're the dumbest hunter I think I've ever seen. He goes, you didn't even know them were partridge. And I'm like, you're right. What the heck?
So you didn't get one your first time?
I did. Oh, heck no. I didn't get one. I don't know, probably for Because then I was hooked on grouse hunting. I didn't know they were grouse until I asked somebody, and I hopped in my little Datsun pickup truck and went up north by myself with my newly acquired hunting dog and said, you know where any partridge are? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, partridge. They're like, what? And I described them to them, and they're like, you're talking grouse, rough grouse. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, man.
But that was the way his family talked. They called him partridge. And I did, once again, I didn't have that person to go back and tell, the story that I just told, and them go, well, that's a rough grouse. Some people call them partridge, it came from here. And so another reason to hang on to that hand once you grab it, so when they have an experience like that, they can go partridge and you can explain. But that is my best favorite all time. I miss them so much. So,
well, it's pretty special that you can remember those moments. I can remember them as well. And I can also say that I had some people that took me hunting when I was really young in life. And my first time ever going pheasant hunting, it was with somebody that it was a neighbor of mine. And he said, hey, let's go pheasant hunting. And I'd never done it. I never had a dog growing up. So it just wasn't something that my family did. They were farmers. And then, like I mentioned earlier, my parents were divorced and my dad was raising us three. And it was just, or my brother and sister and I, and it was just, life circumstances, right? It's different for everybody. Everybody has their own story, but mine in particular with the pheasant hunting, never had that opportunity. My neighbor invited me and I just had an Remington 830 pump shotgun, just like you. And we went out there and his dog basically ran away from us and we chased it through grassland on public land. That dog flushed a couple pheasants, maybe 400 or 500 yards away. But I got I got to experience it, right?
yeah.
And you can always say, hey, that was my first time hunting and look at what I'm doing today. So it was a seed that he planted, and I've told this story at many Pheasants Forever banquets, and I always tell people, Pheasants Forever is the habitat organization, right? They plant seeds in the soil to hopefully grow grass that will hopefully grow birds. But this friend of mine, he didn't have to take me hunting, but he did. He planted a seed that has grown in my heart, and it's helped me grow into the person that I am today, all because he just extended the invitation. That was very simple. He extended the invitation. He planted a seed that is continuing to grow today. And we, as hunters, have the opportunity to do the exact same thing. He didn't have a great dog. He didn't have a great piece of land. He didn't show me a bunch of birds. We didn't come home with any birds. Doesn't matter. He still gave me the opportunity. And then I was able to experience it for myself and decide if I wanted to continue and do it again and try again. And when you fail and fail and fail and then succeed, the reward is way sweeter than being handheld into the best hunt of your life and not having to earn it. So I tell people, take them. If it's going to be crummy weather and they may not get a bird, take them. It doesn't matter. Don't miss the opportunity. Do not pass on the opportunity. Scott, do you have any closing thoughts, any words of wisdom, anything that you want somebody listening right now to say, gosh, I want to do that this hunting season?
Oh boy, I do, but I just thought of something when you said Pheasants Forever, plant a seed in the soil. They should get a new T-shirt for the mentor program that says "Plant a seed in the soul." Wouldn't that be awesome?
Oh yeah, that's deep.
Oh,
I like it. I'm gonna send Bob St. Pierre a message right now.
Yeah. Oh, I got a Bob.
Making a note.
I got a Bob story. I met him at Pheasant Fest, and the only way I met him is I had my wire-haired pointing griffin hat on, and he walked past me, and he goes, "Nice hat," and I go, "Well, thanks." I go, "Are you Bob St. Pierre?" And he's like, "Yeah," and he shakes my hand, and he stood there and talked to me and asked me about my dogs for like 5 minutes, and there's people all over recognizing him. And he took that time he reached out and he grabbed my hand. It's what I'm talking about. It was like so cool. I'm like, thanks, Bob. That was awesome. But
yeah, Pheasants Forever is so fortunate to have Bob St. Pierre. He is as good as they get. He's as genuine as they come. He cares about people, the land, the dogs, the birds, everything. And it's a blessing, no doubt about it.
yep.
Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to send a message. Last thoughts before we wrap this up going into this hunting season.
So it sounds like it's going to be an awesome season. I've been listening to you. I've been looking at the weather reports, things like that. I think this is going to be a great opportunity to reach out and grab someone's hand. You see them in a parking lot, and they get back and they go. You ask them, take the time. Don't just get in your truck. Ask them how they did, and when they say, "Well, it wasn't so good," offer up a different place. Share some of your knowledge. Just spread that love. Reach out to a Scott and a Travis. Everybody knows someone like us, right? Help us out. And plant the seed. It's a great fire. It's the only way we're gonna continue to get this done, and it's not just boys, and it's not just girls, and it's not just men, it's not just women, it's us, it's everyone, and it's just so much fun, all the things that go with it. So that would be my last word.
Amen. I agree wholeheartedly. Take somebody out hunting this year, somebody that's never gone before, and let them experience the joy that we all share so much. Once again, Scott, thank you. And once again, thank you to North Dakota Tourism for helping us make this show possible. We can't do it without you. To beg your limit this fall in North Dakota, visit legendarynd.com. Next week, I think I'm finally ready to announce some pretty big news. I hope you'll join us. It's exciting. And if it's not next week, the announcement will be the week after, but you're going to have to come back to hear what it is. I hope you'll join us next time for another episode of the Flush Podcast.